make about 24. The more we fidget and deal around with things, the more credibility we lose. And so you always want to keep your movements to a minimum as well. And then mostly it's people like teenagers that will raise their voice at the end of a sentence. Have you heard that with people? Does that drive you nuts? Why? It sounds like the person is questioning everything and really not knowing what they should say or how to say it. So always adjust your mode of speaking. And that helps too. Like if you're very loud and outgoing and you're talking to someone that's very quiet and shy, you want to do verbal mirroring. You want to tone it down a little bit. However, if you are a little quiet and shy and you feel like this person's running all over you, what do you want to do? Steeple, get those shoulders up, get those elbows out, and really, really start talking a little bit more loudly. I just seem to be having issues with this. Okay, quickly run over this. Interaction zones. There's been a lot of studies too about how comfortable people are with where we are around them. Now, from what I understand, people in the U.S. are a lot of times a little more protective of their little private area that surrounds them. Some people want a lot more distance. So public is about 7 feet. That's when you want people to not get into your space. And just think about it. How about in church? Someplace like that, or at a meeting. Do you ever see anybody sit in the front row? Do you ever see people sitting next to each other, or do they try to have a little space over here? What about movie theaters? Isn't that terrible when you have to try to move people over, especially if they say, no, I'm not moving, and that's the only way both of you can get in there? Why is that? Because our space is so valuable and so important to us. And so you think of bathroom stalls. Sometimes with bathroom stalls, even if there's like 4 or 5, and then somebody comes in and plops down next to the one next to us, are we a little uncomfortable? Because it's like, why didn't you go over to one of these? You know, you're invading my space. But that can happen. And then you have social. That's 3 to 6 feet. That's where you can have a conversation with people. You're kind of in the in-group, and yet at the same time, you can not be yelling around at other people. 1 to 2 feet is when it's more personal, more intimate. And that's when you want to talk to somebody privately, but you never want to get any closer than 1 foot to a person unless it's a very personal conversation. And so a lot of times studies have shown that if men and women are talking to each other, guys want more space. They want more distance between you and them than we care to as women. And so 18 inches is a good length of space to have in between. So if you just want to think about putting your elbow at your side, hand out here, that's about how close you want to stand to somebody, and no closer. Okay, I know it's hard right after lunch. Whoop. So I might forego some of this. Okay, just a little bit on details. If associates see that you take pride in your appearance, are more likely to assume that you take pride in your work and their business as well. Have any of you had professors that would tell you that that doesn't matter, what you look like or how you come across to people? I've given some programs to college students, and a lot of them were in finance and accounting, and were the business ones where they're handling people's accounts, they're handling people's money. And I've had different students say, you know what, our professors tell us that doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter what we look like or how we present ourselves as long as we have the technical knowledge. And that is so far from the truth, because when people don't have that appearance that they're well put together and organized, then a lot of times the individuals are going to think, well, if you look that disheveled, what are you going to do with my business? What are you going to do with my account? And so that is something that can really hurt people in their appearance. So basically, we just want to make sure people are taking us seriously. That is so important. Always want it to move us up and not hold us back. Okay, we're going to... You do have a handout in your material on the powers of persuasion and perception. We've all heard the comments about perception is our reality. Would you agree to that? Whatever you think you are and how important you think you are and how capable you think you are is the way you are. It's also the way we perceive other people. And so we have so much power in there to be able to change the perceptions people have of us, or to improve them in some way by the perception that we have. And so we can change that. Do you know anybody, or can you think of someone that maybe used to have a really bad reputation that really worked on it but changed their image around? Or think about you. Who do you have? You think about somebody?
Yeah, she did some questionable things in the past, but now she's on the straight and narrow. She has a really great career ahead of her. So.
Good. And how did she change that perception?
I think hanging out with different people and being in a different environment. That helps
Okay.
a lot.
Yeah, a lot of times we can totally change that when it's maybe gotten out of whack a little bit. And so think about the different ways that people might talk about you when you're not there. Any thoughts about that? Because that's the kind of perception we want. We want to have a very positive perception and personal power. Now, personal power, you know, again, people will do things because they want to or because they have to. And it's that image that's perceived. And so when you think of someone who maybe has a suit on, they're very well groomed, they have very confident, positive body signals, what is your perception of that person? They seem like somebody who has a good education. They're in charge. Exactly, exactly. And so again, you want to have that personal power. Now a lot of times I've seen teachers in the schools that go in very disheveled, they're all thrown together, they dress like the students, and then there's more problems with the students because they look at this teacher as being one of them. And a John Malloy study, and it was years ago, but it still proves a point of this gentleman who was a manager in 2 different locations. So every time he was in one location, he wore a suit and he was very professional in his appearance. And then when he went to the other location, he was very, very casual in his appearance. And after a while, they noticed that when he was in the one where he looked the authority, people always knocked on his door before they entered his office. They always treated him with respect. When he was in the other location, people would just barge right in. They didn't pay much attention and treated him just like one of them. And so the only difference was in his wardrobe. And so he positioned himself in the one to be the authority figure by what he was doing and how he was looking. Another way to do that with your nonverbals is, I love this study because it helps us so much in how people perceive us, is there was a study done of a man that was 5'10" and weighed 143 pounds. And this applies just as much to women. And so researchers had him adopt what they called a lower class stance, where he just kind of ambled along. He didn't look very confident. He didn't look like he was really motivated to go anywhere or do anything. And researchers asked strangers what their opinion was of this man. Overall, they guessed him to be 5'9", 136, sheepish and ineffective. So how would you like to be considered sheepish and ineffective and you hadn't said a word? It was actually only by the way he carried himself. And so then the same man wearing the same clothing adopted more of an upper class stance. His chin was up parallel to the floor. His shoulders were rolled back. And he was very confident in his walk. Not arrogant, but very confident. And researchers asked other strangers what their opinion was of this man. Overall, they guessed him to be 5'11", 160, masculine and aggressive. What made the difference? Only how he carried himself. So he positioned himself as the authority. And then, of course, our performance, the more we learn and do and the more we share, the more we're going to be respected by others. Now, I know we're almost done here, so I'm going to flip to the very last page. This would be, is there 3 things that you can think of that you would like to change in your image of yourself or in your communication style, your communication skills? Could it be something different with grooming, a wardrobe that's better fitting to the career? Could it be repackaging yourself somewhere as the knowledgeable person, the go-to person that is very powerful, but at the same time is fair and will always listen to other people and take their comments or suggestions into consideration too? Think of some things just for a moment. Anybody want to share anything, or is that a little too personal? You always want to think about, what is it that I could do that would improve my communication skills even more? Okay, just quickly, do you have any questions on any kind of business etiquette, wardrobe, communication skills? I just want to have a minute to address those if you do. Yes?
I have a question on handshake, how important that is, because a lot of people are, conscious about hurting people. Like Dr. Chatterjee said about the firm grip that hurts people. And a lot of people, with older people with arthritis and stuff, I just wondered if it really is so important anymore as it was, and also about the part you were saying about the way you dress. I mean, I see how casual. I went to UMC's clinic the other day, and they all had sweatshirts on and things like that, and how the public perceives us. Is it so important with the public as it used to be, or is some of these research aging? Are we, the people that we're doing the research with, are they your peers, my peers, and not the younger people? And it does seem to be changing.
Well, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, and that's an exact, but that's also a generational issue.
Right.
Because the younger ones think, well, you old fogey. I've been hired by companies to work with maybe a young attorney or a young PR person who was very professional and yet all hanging out of her shirt. And a lot of people still don't like that. And as long as the boomers and probably some of the older Generation X are basically still in charge for the most part, it does matter. If studies have shown, and even recent ones, when people have the same qualifications and skills, if one looks more pulled together and more polished and like they know what in the world they're doing, they will draw more people to them because people feel more confident. They feel more comfortable that I can give my business to them or they can take care of me and I don't have to worry about them being shoddy, being in a hurry. And so a lot of it still does matter. It really does. And I've heard people and managers and company executives and owners from all walks of life and all types of companies that have really been airing a lot of frustration in the impression and the image and the manners that people are giving to the rest of the world that comes into them for business. So, and even if somebody wears, like I know a lot of nursing and things like that, people have a certain uniform, a certain outfit. But is the hair combed? Is there maybe a little bit of makeup on? Are the shoes polished? There are so many things that even people who wear a uniform can do. I remember when a gentleman came over to give a bid on moving, when I moved last time, and his truck was clean. He was wearing blue jeans and the whitest t-shirt I'd ever seen. He'd just gotten out of the shower. He was very fresh and all pulled together and looked very neat. His shoes were neat. And I looked at him and I thought, wow, if he, as a mover, is going to take that much care and pride in his appearance, even though he's still wearing nice jeans, he's going to take good care of my furniture. And so people are still making a lot of impressions on that. They really are. And, I would much rather be comfortable, I think, with somebody who looked like they took time to take care of themselves and their appearance and all of that. And even with a handshake, if we look at someone as very, very frail, might just a light touch on the shoulder, kind of pull them in that way, and a big smile on the face. I mean, that means everything. So and a lot of people, too, are so nervous about all the disease and all the germs nowadays. Some people just don't want to shake hands anymore. And so we can certainly respect that. And I've had people say, well, what do I'm running these people that want to hug. No, I don't want to hug. And I said, if you don't want to hug or tell your teenage girls to, you can hug somebody if they insist on it. You can put those elbows right up there and you can pat them like this, but there's this big barrier here with your arms and they can't get in there to you to give you an old body slamming hug. You do it this way. And so all those things will make a difference, yes.
How cut and dry is this? I was looking at the one about the jewelry. Okay, I love flashy, sparkly, dangly earrings, and I do wear them. Does that just demolish my credibility?
No, and as I'm looking at you, you have a beautiful blouse on. I mean, you look wonderful. You're not wearing like 5 or 6 chains. You just have the earrings, and that looks very, very nice. A lot of it is if somebody's just loaded down with bling, bling, bling. And I have a friend who's an entertainer, and she's just like bling all over, but that's what she does, But a lot of people wouldn't be comfortable with that. Simplicity is always best. To me, that's simplicity, and it's very classy. So I wouldn't worry about that at all.
Can I ask her?
Sure.
What do you do?
I work in CME. I'm an admin assistant.
Okay.
So that will make a difference too. The more you're working with the public, the more careful you have to be with all of those things. And I know it's 2 minutes to 1, so I'm just going to close. Just briefly, I had the honor of writing The Unstoppable Woman's Guide to Emotional Well-Being. Mine's From Self-Conscious to Self-Confident, with 23 ladies from 4 continents. And this is an awesome book, The Unstoppable Woman. This is something that's available. I wrote this book. It's actually being redone. Rule of Thumb Guide to Marketing Yourself for Success. All about who you are, what you want to do, and then talking about your communication skills, image, etiquette. This has a lot of exercises in it to actually do that will help you be more comfortable. Just finished this one, Total Leadership for Men and Women. My topic is female leadership. There's power in those genes, G-E-N-E-S. And four countries here, the authors. So I have these available too, Total Leadership for Men and Women. And then the Women's Advantage calendar was blessed to be able to contribute a quote in here too. This is fun. There's quotes, wit and wisdom from ladies all over the country, business women. So I want to thank you. If you have any questions, if there's anything you ever want to ask me, my information's on there. Call me or email me. I would just love to answer any questions you have. So feel free to do that. And if you want any personal coaching, love to do that too. But thank you so much. You've been wonderful.